You are not who you think you are, not in a way that most people mean when they say that, not as a spiritual platitude, not as a motivational statement. Literally, biologically, scientifically, you are carrying inside your body, inside the very molecules that make up your cells, the memories, the fears, the wisdom, the trauma, and the unfinished stories of people who lived and died long before you were born. Your ancestors are not behind you. They are inside you, in your DNA, in your nervous system, in the way your body responds to threat, in the way your heart opens to beauty, in the inexplicable fears that have no clear source in your own life experience, in the gifts and capacities that seem to come from nowhere, arriving fully formed, as if they were always there, because they were. They were carried to you through generations of human lives, through joy and suffering and survival, through the extraordinary persistence of people who faced things you will never have to face and kept going anyway. Tonight, we are going to explore one of the most extraordinary frontiers of modern science, a field called epigenetics, and its implications are so profound, so far-reaching, that they challenge everything we thought we knew about inheritance, identity, and the nature of the human being. We are going to look at what the latest research actually shows about how experience is encoded in DNA and how it is transmitted across generations. We are going to draw on the wisdom of indigenous traditions around the world, who have known for thousands of years what science is only now beginning to verify. We are going to explore what it means to carry the unfinished business of your ancestors, and what it might mean to finally complete it. And we are going to ask the question that this research makes unavoidable. If you are carrying the memories of those who came before you, who exactly are you? Where does your story end and theirs begin? These are not comfortable questions, but they are important ones. And I think by the end of tonight, you will find that the answers are not frightening. They are liberating. Let us begin with the science. For most of the 20th century, biology operated under a relatively simple model of inheritance. Your genes, the sequence of DNA you inherited from your parents, determined your biological characteristics, your height, your eye colour, your predisposition to certain diseases. These were fixed at conception and could not be substantially altered by your experience. What happened to you in your life, what you ate, how you lived, what you suffered or celebrated, could not be passed on to your children at the genetic level. Each generation started fresh. This was called the central dogma of molecular biology, and it was treated as settled fact. The idea that acquired characteristics could be inherited was associated with a discredited 19th century scientist named Lamarck, and was considered one of the embarrassing dead ends of biological history. Then, beginning in the 1980s and accelerating through the 1990s and 2000s, something began to emerge from the research that nobody expected. Researchers studying the children of famine survivors found that the descendants had different metabolic profiles than expected, not because of their genes, but because of how their genes were being expressed. Researchers studying the descendants of trauma survivors found measurable differences in stress hormone regulation that could not be explained by the inherited DNA sequence alone, researchers studying laboratory animals found that experiences of stress, trauma, and enrichment could produce heritable changes in behaviour and physiology. Across multiple generations, something was being passed down that was not the DNA itself. The field that emerged from this discovery is called epigenetics. Epi means above or on top of. Epigenetics is the study of changes in gene expression, changes in how genes are read and activated, that occur without changes to the underlying DNA sequence itself. Think of DNA as the text of a book. The text is fixed, the same letters in the same order. But epigenetics is like the punctuation, the formatting, the emphasis. The way the text is presented determines how it is read. And these presentational features, the chemical tags, the methylation patterns, the histone modifications, that determine which genes are switched on and which are switched off, can be altered by experience. And here is the part that changes everything. These epigenetic changes can be inherited. They can be passed from parent to child, from grandparent to grandchild, and potentially across many more generations than that. Your great-grandmother's experience of famine can still be affecting your metabolism today. Not because you inherited a damaged gene, but because you inherited an altered pattern of gene expression. A pattern that says food may be scarce. Hold on to every calorie. Your grandfather's experience of war and terror can still be shaping the sensitivity of your stress response. Your nervous system's threshold for alarm. Not because you inherited a broken gene, but because you inherited a sensitized epigenome, a nervous system calibrated by ancestral experience. To be on high alert, the trauma of your ancestors is not just history, it is biology. It is alive in your body right now. One of the most compelling studies in this field was conducted by researchers at Mount Sinai School of Medicine, who studied the children and grandchildren of Holocaust survivors. They found that the descendants of survivors showed measurable differences in the expression of genes related to stress hormone regulation, compared to Jewish families who had not experienced the Holocaust. The terror and trauma of that historical period had been encoded in the epigenome and transmitted across generations. The grandchildren were not alive during the Holocaust. They had no direct experience of it. They had not been told about it in ways that would explain the physiological differences, and yet their bodies carried its mark. Similar findings have emerged from studies of the descendants of enslaved people in America, the children of famine survivors in Sweden and the Netherlands, the grandchildren of those who experienced the Rwandan genocide, and indigenous communities whose cultures were systematically destroyed by colonialism. In each case, the research found measurable biological differences, consistent with the transmission of the ancestral experience. This is not metaphor. This is measurable, reproducible, peer-reviewed science. Your ancestors live in you now. Indigenous traditions around the world have understood this for thousands of years. The concept of ancestral memory, of carrying the unfinished business of those who came before, is central to the spiritual understanding of cultures on every continent. In West African traditions, the ancestors are understood as an active presence in the lives of the living, not as ghosts, not as superstition, but as a real and living dimension of the family and community, whose influence continues long after physical death. The ceremonies, the rituals, the offerings are not symbolic gestures. They are technologies for maintaining a conscious relationship with the ancestral field, for honouring what was received, and for completing what was left unfinished. In many Native American traditions, decisions are made with consideration for their impact 7 generations into the future. 7 generations, not 5 years, not 1 generation, 7 generations. Because the understanding is that what we do today, what we carry, what we heal, what we complete, will be felt by people who are not yet born. We are not isolated individuals moving through a world of other isolated individuals. We are nodes in a vast web of relationship, extending backward into time and forward into time in ways that our ordinary sense of self does not capture. The Japanese tradition of Naikan, a form of structured self-reflection, invites practitioners to spend days in deep contemplation of what they have received from their parents and ancestors, not what was done wrong, not what was painful or difficult, what was given, the food that was prepared, the clothing that was provided, the sacrifices that were made without announcement or acknowledgement, the love that was given imperfectly but given. This practice consistently reveals something profound. How much was received? How much was given without acknowledgement? How much of our suffering is a continuation of suffering that began before we were born? And how much of our healing could be an act of gratitude to those who came before us? In the Germanic shamanic tradition, a therapeutic approach called family constellations, developed by Bert Hellinger in the 20th century, works directly with ancestral patterns, helping individuals identify and resolve trauma that has been transmitted across generations. The process involves setting up a representation of the family system and allowing the movements and feelings that arise to reveal the hidden dynamics, the forgotten tragedies, the unacknowledged losses, the interrupted bonds that continue to influence the living. The results, reported by thousands of practitioners around the world, often include the resolution of patterns that had persisted for generations, patterns of illness, conflict, failure, and self-destruction. That dissolved when the ancestral root was addressed. This work is not fringe. It is practiced in hospitals, universities, and therapeutic settings around the world. And the research in epigenetics provides a biological framework for understanding why it works. The ancestral field is real. The inheritance is real, and it can be healed. So what does this mean for you? If you are carrying the memories, the trauma, the unfinished stories of your ancestors, then some of what you experience as your own suffering may not originate with you. Some of the fears that feel so personal, so deep, so inexplicable, may be older than you are. Some of the patterns that keep repeating in your life, the relationship patterns, the financial patterns, the health patterns, may be echoes of patterns that began generations before you were born. This is not a reason for despair. It is a reason for compassion. Compassion for yourself, for what you have been carrying without knowing you were carrying it. And it is a reason for action. Because if these patterns were transmitted to you, they can also be healed by you. And when they are healed in you, the research suggests they are less likely to be transmitted to those who come after you. You are not just living your own life. You are completing something. You are the latest expression of a long line of human beings, each of whom did their best with what they had, each of whom left some things unfinished, and each of whom is somehow still present in you. Let me explore something else with you, something that the epigenetic research points toward. But that goes beyond what the science has yet fully mapped. The question of ancestral gifts. We've been talking primarily about ancestral trauma, about the difficult material that gets passed down, but the same mechanisms that transmit trauma also transmit wisdom, also transmit resilience, also transmit capacity. Your ancestors who survived famines developed metabolic efficiencies that they passed on to you. Your ancestors who survived persecution developed a kind of social intelligence, a reading of threat and safety that lives in your nervous system. Your ancestors who were healers or artists or leaders developed capacities and sensitivities that found their way into your inheritance. You are not just carrying the wounds of the past, you are carrying the gifts. The question is whether you have access to them, whether the conditions of your life allow those gifts to express themselves, or whether they are buried under the weight of the transmitted trauma, waiting to be uncovered. This is one of the reasons that healing ancestral trauma is not just about reducing suffering. It is about recovering what was buried with the suffering, the gifts that were suppressed when survival required all available energy, the capacities that went underground when the circumstances demanded it, when the trauma is resolved, when the frozen energy begins to move again. Often what emerges is not just relief, it is capacity, gifts that were always there, now finally able to express themselves. Before we close tonight, I want to offer you a practice for connecting with your ancestral lineage, with both the wounds and the gifts. Find a quiet place, sit comfortably and close your eyes. Take a few slow breaths and allow your body to settle. Now, in your imagination, see yourself sitting in a vast space. Behind you, stretching back further than you can see, is a long line of people, your parents. Behind them, their parents. Behind them, their parents. Generation upon generation, stretching back through centuries, through thousands of years of human life. Each of these people faced something, each of them suffered something, each of them survived something, and each of them, in some way, made it possible for you to be here, now, without trying to see them clearly, without forcing any specific imagery. Simply acknowledge their presence. They are behind you. They are with you. Their lives are in your cells. Their stories are in your blood. Their unfinished business is your inheritance, and their gifts are your birthright. Say to them, silently or aloud, I see you. I honor what you carried. I receive the gifts you passed to me, and I am willing to heal what can be healed, so that what comes after us is lighter. Sit with this for a few minutes. Notice what arises. Notice what feelings come, what images, what unexpected recognitions, and then take a breath and bring your attention forward to this moment, to this life, to the extraordinary fact that you are here, the inheritor of all of that, with the capacity to choose what to do with it. You are not just one person. You are a lineage, and the lineage continues through you. Subscribe to Sacred Flame, because this exploration goes deeper with every video. Until next time, Honour those who came before you. Receive the gifts they passed to you. Heal what can be healed. And remember, you carry within you the accumulated wisdom and resilience of every human being who made it possible for you to exist. That is not a small thing. That is extraordinary, and it is yours. I want to go deeper into something that I touched on earlier, something that I think is one of the most important dimensions of this topic. The question of what it actually means to heal ancestral patterns. Because there is a way of thinking about this work that can actually make things worse. A way that turns the concept of ancestral inheritance into another story about being broken. Another reason to feel that something is fundamentally wrong with you. Another layer of explanation for why life is difficult. And I want to address that directly. The purpose of understanding ancestral inheritance is not to give you a new story about why you are damaged. It is to give you a more accurate understanding of what you are carrying so that you can carry it more consciously and ultimately set it down. There is a difference between identifying with the ancestral wound and witnessing it. When you identify with it, you become it. The trauma is not something you carry, it is something you are. And from that position, healing is almost impossible because you cannot heal something you believe you are. But when you witness it, when you can hold it with some degree of spaciousness and compassion, when you can say, this is something I carry, this is not what I am, then movement becomes possible. The wound can be seen, which means it can be approached, which means it can eventually be healed. This is one of the deepest purposes of the contemplative practices that we explore on this channel. The development of the witness, the capacity to observe, experience without being consumed by it, to see the fear without becoming the fear, to see the grief without drowning in it, to see the ancestral pattern without believing that it is the final word on who you are and what is possible for you. Because the ancestral patterns, as real and as powerful as they are not the deepest thing in you. The deepest thing in you is the awareness that can witness the patterns, the awareness that was here before the patterns were formed, the awareness that will be here after the patterns have been resolved. And that awareness is not wounded, cannot be wounded, is not the product of any ancestry, but is the ground of consciousness itself, appearing as you. When you recognize this, even for a moment, something shifts, not because the ancestral patterns suddenly disappear. They may take years of work to resolve, but because you're no longer identified with them as your ultimate reality, you are the sky and they are the weather, real weather, significant weather. Weather that matters and must be attended to, but weather, not the sky, and the sky is what you ultimately are. Let me tell you about something that the research in epigenetics suggests that I find extraordinarily hopeful. It is not just trauma that is epigenetically transmissible. Healing is transmissible too. When you do the work of resolving ancestral patterns, when you bring the frozen grief to completion, when you allow the fear to move through rather than suppressing it, when you restore the broken bonds and honor the forgotten members of the lineage, something changes in your epigenome, and that change can be passed to those who come after you. You are not just healing yourself, you are healing your children and your grandchildren and the generations beyond them who will never know your name, but whose lives will be different because of what you chose to face. This is perhaps the most profound form of legacy available to a human being. Not the accumulation of wealth or status, not the buildings or the businesses or the achievements, but the healing, the willingness to stop and face what your ancestors could not face, to feel what they could not feel, to complete what they could not complete, and in doing so, to change the inheritance, to pass forward something lighter, something more free, something more whole. The indigenous traditions understood this. The ceremonies of healing and honouring, the rituals of acknowledging and releasing, were not just for the benefit of the living. They were understood as acts that affected the ancestors and the descendants simultaneously. The living, the dead, and the not yet born, all connected in a web of relationship. That did not recognise the boundaries our individualistic culture takes for granted. When you heal, the healing ripples outward through time, in both directions. This is not mysticism. This is the logical implication of what epigenetics is showing us. We are not isolated individuals. We are nodes in a continuous living transmission. That began long before we were born and will continue long after we are gone. And the quality of that transmission depends on what we choose to do in the brief window of our lives. Let me offer you one more practice before we close. This one is about receiving the gifts. We spend a lot of time in this kind of work, focusing on what needs to be healed, and that is important. But I want to make sure we also take time to consciously receive what is good in the inheritance, the resilience that got your lineage through impossible circumstances, the love that was expressed imperfectly but persistently, the intelligence, the creativity, the capacity for joy that has been flowing through your family line, the specific gifts that showed up in your grandparents or great-grandparents, or in the stories you have heard about people you never met. Right now, think of one ancestor or one quality that you sense has been passed to you. A quality of strength, of humour, of caring, of persistence. Feel it in your body, not as an idea, but as something actually present, a quality in you that came through someone before you. Acknowledge it and let yourself feel, if you can, gratitude, not just for the quality itself, but for the person who carried it before you and passed it forward. That quality is in you now. It is yours to use, yours to develop, yours to pass forward. This is your inheritance, not just the wounds, the wisdom, not just the trauma, the gifts, not just the unfinished business, the love that has been moving through your lineage from the very beginning. Subscribe to Sacred Flame, because this conversation is only beginning. There is so much more to explore about who you are, where you come from, and what you are capable of. Until next time, honour those who came before you, receive the gifts they carried forward, heal what can be healed, and remember, you are not just one person. You are a lineage. You carry within you the accumulated wisdom and love of everyone who made it possible for you to be here. That is not a small thing. That is everything. There is a dimension of this topic that I have not yet addressed. A dimension that I think is essential for the complete picture. The question of ancestral memory that is not trauma. We have been talking about epigenetics, primarily in the context of stress and suffering, because that is where the research has been most dramatic. But the same mechanisms that encode traumatic experience. Also encode ordinary experience. Also encode learning. Also encode adaptation to environments. Also encode relationship patterns. Your ancestors who lived in cold climates developed metabolic adaptations that allowed them to thrive in cold. Your ancestors who lived in tropical environments developed different adaptations. Your ancestors who were musicians developed neural pathways and sensitivities that may have found their way into your inheritance. Your ancestors who were farmers developed a relationship with soil, with seasons, with the patient attention of growth. That may express itself in you as something you cannot quite name. A comfort in natural settings, a patience with long processes, a satisfaction in tending things. You may have always wondered where certain tendencies come from, why you are drawn to certain things, why certain environments feel immediately like home, why certain skills come easily. As if you have done them before. You have, not in this life, but the life force that is expressing itself as you has been expressing itself through your lineage for a very long time, and the experiences of that long expression are encoded in you. This is both humbling and extraordinary. Humbling because it reminds you that you are not as autonomous as the modern self-made individual myth suggests. You did not arrive here as a blank slate. You arrived with a history, rich, complex, layered, extending back through thousands of generations of human experience, and extraordinary because it means that you carry within you far more than you know, far more than you have access, far more than you have given yourself credit for. The indigenous elders who speak of the ancestors are not speaking romantically. They are speaking practically. They are pointing to a real resource, a real depth of human experience and wisdom. That is available to you if you know how to access it. One of the ways to access it is through attention to what I call ancestral resonance. Those moments when you encounter something, a piece of music, a landscape, a craft, a way of moving, and feel an immediate and inexplicable sense of recognition, not familiarity from this life, something deeper, something that feels like coming home to a place you have never been. These moments of ancestral resonance are worth paying attention to. They are pointing towards something in your inheritance, something that wants to be expressed through you. The musician in your lineage, recognizing itself in a melody. The healer in your lineage, recognizing itself in someone's pain. The teacher in your lineage, recognizing itself in a student's confusion. When you feel this resonance, do not dismiss it. Do not explain it away. Let yourself follow it, even a little, even tentatively, because what you are following is not just personal preference. It is the call of the lineage, asking you to pick up where it left off, to complete what it began, to bring to expression what it was reaching toward. This is what it means to be in right relationship with your ancestry, not to be burdened by it, not to be controlled by it, but to be in conscious dialogue with it, to receive what it offers, to heal what it carries, to complete what it began, and to pass forward something enriched by your particular life, your particular gifts, your particular understanding. To those who will come after you, this is the sacred responsibility of being human, not the responsibility of burden or obligation, but the responsibility of love. The love that says, I am not here only for myself. I am here as part of something larger, and what I do with my life matters beyond my life. This understanding, when it is truly felt and not just intellectually grasped, changes the quality of every choice you make. Every act of healing becomes an act of service. To those who suffered before you, every moment of genuine joy becomes a vindication of the survival and persistence of your lineage. Every step toward wholeness and freedom becomes a gift to those who come after you. You are not just living your life, you are the living edge of a very long story, and what you write in the chapter that is yours to write will echo forward in ways you cannot fully imagine. Subscribe to Sacred Flame, because this story continues, video by video, layer by layer. We are uncovering what it actually means to be human, what you actually are, where you actually come from, and what is actually possible. Until next time, look behind you, see the long line of those who brought you here. Look ahead, see the long line of those who will come after, and know that what you do in this moment, in this life, matters to all of them. You are not small, you are a lineage, and the lineage is sacred. I want to bring this conversation to a place that feels complete by addressing something that has been implicit throughout everything we have discussed tonight. The question of what it means to be an ancestor yourself. Because you are one. You already are. Not in the future. Right now. Every choice you make today. Every pattern you perpetuate or interrupt. Every wound you heal or ignore. Every gift you develop or suppress is already shaping the epigenetic inheritance of those who will come after you. If you have children, or will have children, or are in close relationship with young people, your nervous system is in constant communication with theirs. The coherence or incoherence of your electromagnetic field, the calm or the anxiety in your body, the openness or the constriction of your presence is being registered and responded to by every nervous system in your proximity. Children do not primarily learn from what adults say. They learn from what adults are, from the quality of presence that surrounds them, from the emotional weather of the family system, from what is felt but not spoken, from the pattern of relationship that is modeled day after day, through thousands of ordinary interactions. This is both sobering and empowering. Sobering because it means that there is no escape from influence. You are influencing those around you, whether you intend to or not. Empowering because it means that the most important thing you can do for those you love is to become more whole yourself. Not perfect, not fully healed, not free of all ancestral pattern, but more conscious, more present, more willing to feel, more willing to heal, more willing to interrupt the patterns that do not need to continue. The work of becoming a good ancestor is not primarily about what you give to others. It is about what you become in yourself, the quality of awareness you cultivate, the depth of compassion you develop, the capacity to be present with difficulty without suppressing it or collapsing into it, the willingness to face what your ancestors could not face, because every time you choose to face it, every time you choose presence over avoidance, healing over suppression, vulnerability over armor, you are changing the inheritance. You are writing a different chapter. You are becoming a different kind of ancestor, one who passes forward not just the wounds, but the medicine for the wounds, not just the trauma, but the understanding of how to move through trauma, not just the fear, but the capacity to be with fear and remain open. This is the highest work available to a human being, not the accumulation of external achievements, but the cultivation of inner wholeness. Not the leaving of monuments, but the leaving of a different quality of inheritance. An inheritance that includes the knowledge of what you are, the knowledge that you are not just a body, not just a personality, not just a story, but something vast and luminous that is using all of that to express itself in the world. That knowledge, passed forward, is the greatest gift you can give, because a descendant who knows what they are, who has received the transmission of genuine inner wisdom, is free in a way that no amount of money or status or external success can provide. Free to live fully, free to love deeply, free to face the inevitable difficulties of life without being destroyed by them, free to be the wave without forgetting the ocean. This is the lineage you are building. This is the ancestor you are becoming. Subscribe to Sacred Flame, because this work continues, video by video, practice by practice, recognition by recognition. Until next time, be the ancestor you wish you had. Heal what can be healed. Pass forward what is worthy. And remember, you are not just one person. You are a lineage, and the lineage through you continues.